Hi, my name is Joshua. I'm with RadioWarrior.ca. We have some amazing guests today concerning the incarceration of Steve. I'd like to introduce Kevin Annette. And Kevin Annette, you can do the introductions all around.
Well, I'm really honored to not only be here with you, Josh, but Steve Finney, Amy Smart, and Beth Speed, Steve's mother. 3 warriors down in Kitchener, Ontario. And I wanted to just begin by saying how happy I am you're out of prison, Steve. And it's a great victory for all of us that your courage and tenacity over the last few days. I want to remind people that under international law, under something called the Rome Statutes of the International Criminal Court and the Nuremberg precedents, citizens have a responsibility when their governments are engaged in crimes against humanity. And I'm reminded when Steve and Amy and the work they're doing in Kitchener is based on the recognition that Canada, the Crown of England, has committed these crimes, and they are taking a stand that every citizen has the right to, and that is simply to say, we do not recognize the jurisdiction of criminal organizations, even if they're garbed in the clothing of government. So what Steve is going through now is a consequence of saying to the local authorities, we don't recognize your jurisdiction. We're standing on common law. We're standing on our rights, especially in the defense of local children and their own child, Amber, who was taken by the Children's Aid Society. So I wanted to just kind of frame that for people to lead into our discussion. Steve, can I ask you, first of all, what happened last Sunday morning? If you could just give a description of what happened to you and what you've been going through the last few days.
Sure. So last Sunday morning, I decided to go for a coffee with my car, having deregistered my vehicle and giving my license back, canceling my contracts under the Highway Traffic Act, and knowing that our government in Canada is a criminal organization, I don't want any part of their contract. So I know that we are declared the Republic of Canada now under a different jurisdiction. So I had taken the Republic of Canada placard and put those on my plate. And I was driving around with those for a couple of weeks, and I seen probably 10 cops in the 2 weeks. A couple times they followed me, and they didn't touch me. They had many opportunities to pull me over, but that Sunday morning, going for my coffee, they drove by me, going down the highway, and they decided to circle around and pull me over in Wendy's parking lot, which I would like to take note as private property. And so the officer walked up to me and he asked me for my name, and I said no thanks, and he said, you're not going to give me your name, and I said no thanks. I said, do you suspect me of criminal activity? And he goes, no, I just want to know your name. Do you have a driver's license? And I said no thanks again. He then radioed somebody, I can't remember what he had did, and then he had said, so you don't have insurance or nothing? I said, nope, those are all contracts that I canceled. I don't want no contracts with the government. So it wasn't long after that another officer pulled in, and they discussed some things. This happened probably as a 5-minute period. And then they came to the conclusion that they were going to open my door. I had my window only open this much the whole time, and my video camera was sitting in the passenger seat recording the whole thing also. So he went to open my door. I shut my door and locked it, and I said, I don't feel safe. And then he looked at the other guy and he said, go get your cruiser and pull it in front of his car. And I felt really that was my opportunity to leave, because I was not safe. They stole our child from us. So we don't trust these people. We feel they're a danger to us, and they don't have that authority also. So we really feel that they can't stop me if I don't feel safe in that environment, that I can go to a place of safety. And there wasn't any witnesses observing this at that point. So then as I went to put, my car's already in first gear. The car was running already, because I was planning on going. I had already decided that before I was even getting pulled over, that if I didn't feel safe, I was going to go. So when I went to go, the cop ran in front of my car, pulled his gun and said, stop the car now. So I put my hands up, and when I did that, just getting confused, I popped my clutch. The car probably jumped another 6 inches. He was 3 feet in front of the car. And then they just come over, smashed my window out, and they tried to pull me through the window, which they only had like that much glass smashed out. So I can't fit through a hole like that big. So I yanked my arm back in and pulled back, and to make sure they couldn't pull me through the window. And I unlocked the door and undid my seatbelt And then they opened it and threw me right on the ground, face first, and the front of my face landed on the cement. And they grabbed my head and jerked it to the side and stepped on my back. And they're just rubbing my face in the asphalt. So that's what was scarring or cutting my face.
So just to be clear, Steve, they claim that you assaulted them with your car. It sounds like quite the opposite, that they were assaulting you.
That's right. Actually, what the officer's statement was apparently is that I went to leave and he had to put his hand down on the car. So how do you put your hand down at the car at the same time you're trying to take your gun out of your holster and point it at me?
Right.
You know
so
what I mean?
You had it down on the pavement, and what happened next?
So once I was on the pavement, they arrested me and put me in the cruiser and talking all tough, you know, Freeman on the land, mocking me. So that gave me a good indication that they're out for people in this movement. So I'm in the cruiser, and 8 cars in total had come on scene, including the police van with the guy in the suit. So I don't know if that's the chief or the superintendent or whoever he was, just sitting over way off to the side observing the whole situation.
I'm sorry, who was observing?
I don't know who it was. Whether it was their chief or their supervisor or whoever, but he was way off in the distance just taking notes.
It sounds like it was a coordinated operation.
Well, yeah, it makes me wonder. Like, I think that just the way it went down. You know what I mean? So after we were all sitting there, they're searching my car, and they grabbed the camera, and they realized that it's still on the whole time. I probably didn't get a full video shoot of everything, but the audio was still on. So, so then I just sat in the cruiser. The whole event was a 45-minute process, and then they took me down to the station.
Did they ever charge you with anything? When they held you and arrested you, did they say they were charging you with anything?
I didn't get read my charges until I was in my cell.
Did they read you any rights?
No rights. I asked to make a phone call. They said only to a lawyer. I said, I don't want a lawyer. I'm self-representing. They said, well, you're out of luck.
What happened in the prison? Sorry.
Sorry, let me bring in Amy and Beth at this point. Now, I know that obviously you were trying to get a hold of Steve and they weren't letting you speak to him. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
What were you doing at that point? How did you even find out what had happened to Steve?
Actually, around 10:30, I had a call from the police officer, and she had left me a message saying that she had seized my wallet out of a red vehicle, of Steve Finney's vehicle. So I had called back, and she said that I had to pick it up, which I couldn't pick it up because I didn't have my license, right? So then after that, I had talked to an officer, Constable Marshall, and he was really, really, really rude. And I said, well, where's my husband? I would like to know where he is. If you're holding him, or did you let him go? Is he released? And he said he cannot tell me. I said, why not? I'm his wife. And he said, because he's an adult. And I said, well, what do you mean? He goes, well, what's there to get? You know, very rude, very ignorant. And that's when I brought up that his oath to the Queen is nullified and abolished, and that he has no authority. And he hung up on me. So.
Now, you and Beth, went to the court when Steve was brought in. Can you tell the viewers what happened in court, like what was happening over those 3 days that he was being held?
Oh, geez. Well, they still wouldn't let us see Stephen at all. We couldn't. We went in totally blind, not knowing what the charges were until, what was it, on
the second day.
The second day.
The second day. Actually, the first day when it was just me and Deanna, which is Kevin's friend, who he introduced me and Stephen to, and me and Deanna went, and the first time I seen Stephen, I was all shooken up. I could not believe what they had done to his face.
Sorry, Amy, but when Steve was brought in court, he still had blood on his face and he was bruised. Is that what you told me?
That's correct.
What did he look like?
His cheek was it looked all bruised to me, and it was very puffy. And the bottom of his nose was all bloody, and the top of his forehead was all red.
Steve, when did this happen?
In the court or
the blood situation when you were before you were brought into court?
I didn't want to get cleaned up. I wanted to walk in the court have my energy or my injuries as is. So I didn't let, even when I went to the hospital on Sunday, I didn't let nobody touch my face. I just wanted to leave it and walk in, and when I walked into court, I said to the judge, "This is what your acting people did to me."
When did this altercation take place then?
What altercation, sorry?
Where you got beat up?
That was on Sunday morning with the police when they threw my face on the ground.
Okay.
That's that would be September the 29th.
Yes.
Yes.
Right. Now, this charade in court went on several days, I remember. They basically were not saying why he was there, and how did that eventually, I know you guys, Amy and Beth, had several conversations with the duty council, and could you what were they saying to you?
Well, at first, what the whole thing comes down to is that the first day Amy and Deanna went. The second day I went with Amy and Deanna. And that's when we heard the charges for the first time of what they were charging Stephen with. And the time period, like I wrote it down, and the time period started at 9:56 approximately, they said, and then it ended at 10:27. But from the time that they got Stephen to the time they actually arrested him, they said that it was 9:56 to 10:07. And I'm like, man, that thing was a setup. For all those cops, they said they had to call in for assistance, and it was like the cops, the other officers were right there. And it's like, how is that possible if they had to call them in from someplace else? You know, like they were right there on hand.
It was all set up.
So you got that impression definitely that he was being targeted because of his beliefs and what he was doing?
Oh, for sure.
Okay, now it was interesting. I remember on the last day, they made reference to our tribunal a number of times. They said actually people could not post bail if they were connected to the International Tribunal into Crimes of Church and State. Is that what they said?
Yes, that's correct. Actually, the duty council had spoken to me and my mother-in-law Beth, and he had said, "Is your name on this?" And I looked at it. I said, "What is it?" And he said, ITCCS. And I looked at it and it said all the names. It had Joshua's name. It had the board, the whole board's name. And he goes, "As long as your name's not on here, we don't have a problem. But if it is, we have a problem."
I looked at that video. You guys are great because you post on YouTube all the time, everything that goes on. But I remember this is a transcript from the duty council. His name's Dave Woodbeck. Quote, "I assume none of you are on the list of people they're concerned about, like the acting secretary, ITCCS. I mean, you're not on the board of that, are you? They're going to wonder if you recognize the jurisdiction of the court, because if you're going to provide sureties, we'll have a problem if you don't recognize our jurisdiction."
That's right.
Exactly.
That's what the game was all about for 3 days. Well, that's what I was doing on the back end. In the jail, first day, no lawyer. I didn't want nobody. I didn't want to talk to him. I went in, told the judge his oath to the Queen was nullified and abolished. I told him that I'm the executor and the beneficiary and that he's a public servant. So that was that. And on my way out, I was kind of mad, and I said, "I'm suing." And I left. Day 2, I talked to that lawyer you just mentioned, and he's trying to convince me that I need to acknowledge their jurisdiction. And I argued with him and said, "I'm not going to recognize your jurisdiction. I can bring common law jurisdiction into the court and challenge your jurisdiction. You have 2 jurisdictions in, and both sides can hold their ground." And he was trying to brainwash me. I could tell. He didn't think I knew enough. And of course, that's what the duty council lawyers do. They prey on the people that they're supposed to stand for, you know. But I knew the jurisdiction thing, and I just stuck my ground. And he made it clear to me that no judge will grant me bail when I'm challenging. I'm basically saying to the judge, "Well, I don't acknowledge your rules, and I don't acknowledge your authority." So
okay. It seems to be this Judge Michael Cuthbertson, whose court you were in. It seems that they were trying in an indirect way to get you to dissociate yourself from the tribunal. Did you get that sense?
I think
that was a definite.
Yeah, I think they were definitely trying to, but I was determined to just stick my ground because I've seen enough on the internet and I've read enough and done my research to just stick my ground on my jurisdiction. Once again, bottom line is they don't have no jurisdiction.
Okay, and why were and how did you get released then?
So then on Tuesday, the judge played the "I'm tired, it's a long day" excuse after they realized I didn't want to compromise with them. So we go in, they're like, you'll be up first thing Wednesday morning. The judge was apologizing that he had to send me back, which I thought was kind of weird. And then, so Wednesday morning comes, and just a note, I knew something was up because in jail, they were treating me totally differently. I was all of a sudden, all the other days, I was chained with prisoners and all this. All of a sudden, I woke up, and when they're moving us through the prison and putting us in the rooms before we get on the bus and searching us and all that, I was isolated. I wasn't allowed to be anybody. Many times I heard the guys going, what cell's Mr. Finney in? Where's that Finney? So I knew something was going on, and I didn't know what, but I definitely caught the vibes. And they transported me in the bus in a compartment by myself, where the other days I was with people.
Sorry, they were isolating you by the. So this would be the second day you were at the prison in Milton. What's the name of the prison, by the way, you were in? Maplehurst?
Maplehurst, yes.
Okay.
And also, the main reason they were isolating me too is because on Tuesday, like I was going into my range and educating the guys, and there's some Native guys in there, so I was talking about what I was doing and the ITCCS and the Genocide Canada and everything. So I had a group of 6 guys around me, and I was teaching them that they're using trust law. I was teaching them that the oaths are abolished. I was teaching them how to sign under duress. So, I was educating these guys, and those guards coming in out see that, you know what I mean? And I'm the new guy. The new guy's usually shut in the corner and doesn't say much, right? So that was the best of that. And the fact that they did see me come back, they know that what I told them was true, you know what I mean?
Well, let me tell the listeners, too, that by the second day, the courts had received over 24 phone calls on behalf of Steve. They were getting calls from all over the world. And on the morning of this last Wednesday, when the day we were released, the Attorney General of Ontario got a call from an NGO at the United Nations that we're affiliated with. And we're not sure how much that had to do with your release, but certainly I think that had something to do with it. And so, we need people to know that this kind of direct action in defense of people works. It had an effect in this case, as did your courage and tenacity in not breaking, Steve.
That's right, and that's all it is. It's fear mongering.
What was the condition like in the jail that you saw with others?
I'll start at the courthouse. Guards in the courthouse, good. I think it comes down to the guards. Respect gets respect. So you just kind of go on that basis. You won't have problems. They'll respect you, and everything's okay. So in the courthouse, guards are good with the cuffs. In the jail, guards were good. They were good with the cuffs. They were never too tight. Now the street beat cops, too tight with the cuffs, rude, ignorant. So you know what I mean. But in the jail, the conditions, crowded, pretty crowded. You got guys sleeping on the floor. You know what I mean? You got 2 bunks. It's probably 5 by 8 size cell, and one guy sleeping on the floor, which I was. And these guys in there are for like driving without a license, and they got 6-month terms.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? For no license. That just seems like a little. Why is a guy being considered a criminal just because he hopped in a car illegally? He didn't hurt nobody, you know what I mean? So things in there were disturbing for me, because I people are in there and they're trapped. The eating, you know what I mean? When I went to go to court, I got a bagel, milk and juice, and then lunch wasn't until 7 hours later, and that was just a bologna sandwich at the courthouse, which is all they give you in the courthouse rooms. But at least they fed you, you know what I mean?
Residential school.
Yeah. Kevin, I'd just like to interrupt for 1 minute. Kevin, pardon me. For new viewers and people that are following this, why is he? What's Steve standing on, and what does it mean that the Canadian government is defunct and the church? Can you explain to people what's actually going on and what rulings happened that Steve would be challenging something like this in the face of the police and the court system?
Right. Well, I mean, as people may know, if you go to www.ITCCS.org, you'll see that last February there was a verdict brought in by a duly formed common law jury of 58 people around the world. We had presented 150 exhibits to these people, showing that the Crown of England, the Government of Canada, the Catholic, United, and Anglican churches, and the Vatican were all engaged in deliberately wiping out Aboriginal children through a plan of deliberate genocide over 100 years. Over 50,000 children died. Those kids have never been accounted for. No one's gone to jail or even trial for the death of one of those children. So after presenting that evidence, the jury duly found all these parties guilty. We had given them endless opportunities to respond. We followed due process. The verdict was that the heads of these organizations and the institutions were guilty of crimes against humanity. We followed the Nuremberg precedents and the international common law, the International Criminal Court Rome Statute that said, criminal bodies, transnational criminal organizations, don't have the right to operate. And we encourage people at that point to act in a capacity to enforce that verdict. And that's basically what Steve and Amy have been doing in Kitchener. They've been saying Crown courts do not have jurisdiction, especially when they're engaged in what appears to be child trafficking for profit.
And that would mean Canadian courts and the corporate courts that have been taking over.
That's right. And now this is simply standing on the law. It's not subverting anything. It's saying that heads of state are subject to judgment, just like any individual is. So what Steve's doing is totally lawful. It may not be legal according to certain statutes, but it's certainly lawful under our traditions of the common law. So
now, does this common law supersede federal? I mean, people don't always understand. Does this common law override federal, constitutional, provincial, municipal laws?
Well, it doesn't so much. I don't ride, but in the case where, and we found this when we tried to bring into Canadian courts the evidence that the Crown committed genocide in residential schools. The judges on two cases in the Alberta and the Nova Scotia Supreme Courts both said, we do not have the jurisdictional competence to rule on whether the Crown is guilty of genocide. They're saying we can rule on it because we, Crown courts, cannot find the sovereign guilty. So we said, fine, it's outside your jurisdiction, but it's not outside the jurisdiction of international law. And that's all Steve is standing on when he says this. He's saying, I should not be obligated as a citizen of Canada to pay taxes to organizations that have murdered children. And you're not obligated under international law to support those kind of crimes. So that's all we're saying, really.
So who is Steve now? If he's not a willing citizen of a country that has been active in the process of genocide, who is Steve now?
I'll let Steve answer that, but I can just say that people have the right to withdraw their consent from any contractual relationship. And if it's a bona fide relationship, then it has to agree. There has to be mutual non-coerced consent on behalf of all parties.
Steve, what would be your answer to that?
Who am I now? Well, I'm just I'm a man. I'm a man that God left equal, all men equal. I'm one of those men. A name is just to give you character, I believe. That name is like just the contracts that they gave to me. That means nothing to me. I'm just a person that has a natural right to be here because God said when He left Earth that He left man dominion of the earth and we're all equal, plain and simple.
So you have the right to have a home. You have a right to do business, to do commerce. You have the right to walk where you need to, and where's the laws? What justifies the right for you to act the way you are acting? What rights do you have that govern your actions?
Just natural common law rights. That's all I'm standing on. Natural rights are rights that are given to us at birth, and common law rights are rights that we act on. That's how I think of all this. And you got to remember, like, I look back at the Ten Commandments, and those are pretty strict. That's a law. That's God's law.
Do not harm anyone. And do not harm anyone. And as long as you're not harming anyone or anything, then there's no way that any law can tell you that you're breaking a law. Right?
Exactly. And that's how I feel about that. Right. That's exactly how I feel about that. and I got to admit, like, going into the prison, it's kind of an awakening because it makes you realize how selfish we live. When you have the materialistic things that puts a price on your freedom, you realize that price tag that they put on your freedom, which is your car, your boat, your riding lawnmower, all those things that make you supposedly happy in life, those are all price tags to your freedom. That's all that stuff is. And they're checking you out through the counter when you die, and then they pass your benefits on to all your relatives. It's just a vicious cycle, you know what I mean? And it's sad that we've been lied to for so many years in the courts about our rights. The simple confusion of common law. No, but in jail, common law? What? That was my response. Hey guys, common law. I'm claiming common law jurisdiction. Common law. What's that? I've never heard of. One guy said, common law? Isn't that the old English law? And there's one guy out of 35 in my range that knew or even heard of it. So, you know.
Kevin.
Well, let me ask all three of you something. We've had an amazing response all over the world to what's happened. People are very charged up. There's a big limelight now on the work we've been doing and on you guys in Kitchener. Let me ask all three of you just to give your thoughts about what you do now. What's the way forward now? What do you plan to do?
Keep the pressure on.
Don't give up.
We made it this far, and obviously it's funny because the Crown actually mentioned ITCCS in court on Wednesday.
Yes, they did.
That's the first time they've even mentioned the word ITCCS. So that was like awesome. You know what I mean?
And did they want to didn't they say something like they wanted for it to let you go? They wanted you to rescind your activity with ITCCS.
Yeah, they didn't want him to be an activist.
Pretty much, yeah. But they can say whatever they want. From Monday to Wednesday, it wasn't changing my opinion. Like that's the thing. These guys are paid to lie to you.
Yeah.
That's how and I don't like liars. So.
Beth, I know that there's more members of your family and other people in your church community that have gotten on board on this. It sounds like this is beginning to spread like a ripple effect.
Yes, my pastor actually is an ex-police officer. And when he heard what had happened to Stephen, he just went, that's not right. That just is not right. And they both said because of, they've been following the ITCCS online. They're checking out everything that's being done. They're following everything that's happening. And they want to start now a prayer group that goes around to City Hall, to the mayor's office, to the Children's Aid, and any other political office that are out there. And we're going to stand there and have prayer and have communion. That's one of the stands we're going to have. My brother-in-law is also a pastor, and he's got a couple of friends that are Christians that are MPPs, and he believes that he can talk to them. So I haven't spoken with Terry personally about it. My husband's been doing it, and we're just waiting to see what happens.
Steve and Amy, any word on your daughter?
No,
not at all.
They don't want to budge. We still haven't got they took her, no court date yet.
I actually called the courts, and when I had asked for a court date, they said, well, what matter is it? And I said, they kidnapped my child. And they said, through CAS, and I said yes, and they go, well, we can't answer it over the phone. You have to have a piece of ID to come in, which that's very strange. And I said, I just want to know when my court date is. And they say, well, as far as we see, there's no court date.
Can you just quickly, for the viewers, why was the child taken?
The child was taken from us because 2.5 years ago, worker had come to my house pretty forcibly and told me I had to leave. That was the first sentence she said to me.
And why was that?
That was Andrea Thornton.
Andrea Thornton, and that was 2.5 years ago when this started.
And that's because you had a juvenile record.
That's right, got a YOA record.
That's disgusting.
15 years old, so it was only a probation thing, so you know what I mean? It wasn't anything severe, and the Young Offenders Act clearly says you don't identify youth. They
Yep.
to be protected because
Yep.
the reason why the Young Offenders Act is created, which I think the Young Offenders Act is in lines with UN Charter on Rights of the Child, because that covers anybody under the age of 18.
Yep.
So that act has to abide by that law, which is international law.
Yep.
And they just, because the judge said in the trial, because it's internal records within CAS, that they're able to share it among other agencies. That was the judge's excuse.
Wow. Kevin, any last thoughts and advice that you might give to the viewing audience and Canadians around Canada?
Well, I want to give all three of the folks here a chance to have a final word, but all I want to say to people is that we have to continue the example of Steve and Amy and Beth and their family. This is how things change from the grassroots, and it shows you can have an effect. You can fight City Hall and win if you mobilize the community. So I'm coming back to Kitchener. I'll be there by late October. We're setting up common law courts in at least 3 places in Ontario now to lead this kind of fight, to defend children especially, who are being grabbed and trafficked through these government systems. And most of the calls I get these days are calls like from people like Steve and Amy who have their children grabbed and trafficked.
I have the same problem. It's like pandemic.
Yes.
It is.
Yes,
So
it is.
I just want to remind people, go to www.itccs.org. You can write to us, hiddenfromhistory1@gmail.com, and we'll come to your area and help you do the kinds of things Steve and Amy are pioneering in Kitchener. I just want to say how proud I am to be connected with all of you guys. It's a real honor.
Thank
You
you,
too,
Kevin.
Kevin. And we appreciate you going out of your way for 20 years to stand up for the children that don't have a voice.
Yeah. Thank you, Kevin.
So now it's our turn to stand up.
Yes, I'd like to share something from the time I've come into this area about 10 years ago. Where the Children's Aid is concerned, there are women that have come from abusive relationships and they've gone for help at the women's shelter. Their children got ripped away by Children's Aid because they were in those shelters. And that has a negative effect on women going for help. Because why should they go for help if the Children's Aid is just going to take their children away from them in the first place? I know personally of another lady that had her children taken. She has 5 children. She's done everything that the Children's Aid wanted. She ended up on, and the very last thing that they did, they said that she couldn't have her kids back because she had to get high blood pressure pills because her blood pressure is so high. She's been going for 5 years fighting for her kids, and she still doesn't get them. And her health is deteriorating because of the stress, and she still doesn't have them. So when you have a government society that rips families apart, and that is their full intention, is to rip families apart, it's not right. And it's time for people to stand up, educate themselves, and please don't ever think that the government is on your side, because they're not.
No.